Grace Chan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you for having me on the show. It's a real honor.
Every version of you, congratulations. Now, can you tell us what it's about?
Yeah, so Every Version of You is my debut novel. It is a science fiction novel set both in Melbourne in the late 21st century and also in this very expansive, glittery, shiny virtual reality world called Gaia. The story focuses on the main character, Tao Yi, who's a Malaysian Chinese Australian woman, and her partner, Naveen, and how their relationship changes when a technology to upload a human mind into the cloud is introduced. So it's a lot about identity and change and migration and hopefully a little bit of what it means to be human.
Love it. Okay. So, your day job is as a psychiatrist. You work full time as a psychiatrist in Melbourne, and yet you've written this you've had the time, inclination, and motivation to write this story. Can you tell us, since this segment is about my big break, what was your big break?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like many writers, I've been scribbling stories since I was a child and um, never really stopped throughout school and university. But it was back in 2018. I was halfway through my psychiatry training, which was quite grueling, and I inadvertently had a break from work. One of my placements fell through, and I thought, oh, maybe this is a bit of an opportunity to give the writing thing a serious go. So I started by reading. I read and discovered a whole bunch of new authors who gave me a lot of inspiration. And then I decided to go along to a couple of festivals and conventions in Melbourne, um, which also fueled the creative spark. Started scribbling some short stories and sending them off. So short stories was where I kind of more seriously started. I was lucky enough to go to the Emerging Writers Festival in 2018 in Melbourne, and I ummed and ahed about this, but I signed up for a 5 minute cold pitch with one of my dream agents, Jacinta de Maze. Um, I went along very nervously with this haphazard pile of short stories and novellas and pitched a speculative fiction collection to her. Very nervously, not thinking that speculative fiction would be very popular at all. But to my amazement, she was interested and asked me to send her more of my stuff. Um, so I didn't hear anything for many months. I kept writing, kept submitting. And one of those short stories gradually grew into the book Every Version of You. It went through quite a few iterations. It started off as a short story, then grew into a novella. I submitted it for Seiger's Viva la Novella in 2019, which is a fabulous prize, and it was shortlisted for that prize. At that point, it was a novella. It didn't win the prize, but I received some really helpful feedback from an editor to saying, oh, there's a lot of stuff in this novel or in this story. Why don't you flesh it out? I think it could do a lot better as a novel. So I went back to my study and thought, okay, I'm going to rewrite this into a novel. So over the next year or two, it became a novel. Jacinta came back and signed me as, I signed her as my agent, my literary agent.
So you
Seizure,
mean you said to Jacinto, I've fleshed this out into a novel now, and she signed you?
yeah, exactly right. So I updated her that it had been shortlisted for Viva la Novella as a novella. I'm going to turn it into a novel, and then she signed me. Yeah, which was super exciting. Um, Yeah, then it became a novel, and Seizure didn't publish it in the end, so we went on sub. And in 2020, it was accepted by Affirm Press, a lovely Australian publisher, Melbourne-based publisher, um, as my debut novel.
How exciting. And it all started because you've got the guts to pitch Jacinta at that session. What do you think you would have happened if you didn't get the courage to do that?
It's funny, isn't it, to kind of look back on those little moments that had a big impact on where we end up. I don't know. I think I'm someone who gets very, I get hugely nervous about putting myself out there, and that's probably why I didn't for many, many years. It's such a scary thing to put your writing out there because it feels so personal. Um, but I'm so glad I did, and I think I'm someone who tells myself it's fine to be nervous, just roll with the nerves and just do it, because what's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is someone will say no, and you'll gain a bit of experience from the whole thing. And the best that could happen is they could say yes. So yeah, I think just little steps to put yourself out there and meet other people in the community. I'm glad I did it. Hope that if I hadn't done it, maybe I would have found some other pathway, but who knows?
I'm glad you did it too, because yes, as you say, it's just those little things and those little moments of courage, and it could result in something like this, Every Version of You by Grace Chan, a new voice in Australian fiction. Congratulations, Grace.
Thank you so much, Valerie.